Chapter 22. The matter would seem to be finished with no harm done, but Hannah was still furious. Granted, Papa had never said that he wouldn't tell Mr. Harris, but she was angry about more than the fact that he had disregarded her plea. Hannah decided that she had to speak up, even if he wouldn't listen. She waited until he had nearly finished supper. "I talked to Mr. Harris today," she said, "at the church site." "I know," he said. "He told me that he would need to speak to you, seeing as you were the one who met those Indians." "I asked you not to tell him." His forehead creased and reddened. "You think you know better than I do? You are asking me to break the law." She was ready for him, determined to make up for her cowardice with Mr. Harris. "Papa, do you consider Miss Lorna a good Christian?" "What in tarnation? What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about when you and Mama got married." She'd first heard the story when she was about 9 years old. Back then, they had spent most evenings gathered around Mama's bed. Mama well wrapped in the plaid shawl no matter what the season, Hannah on one side in the rocking chair, Papa in the armchair on the other. Hannah had asked Mama how she and Papa got married. Mama started to speak but lost her breath. She nodded at Papa to take over. "I went and spoke to Miss Lorna," he said. "She was as close to family as your Mama had, and by then I'd been taking supper at her place for more than a year, so she was almost like family to me, too. I asked her if she thought it would be all right for me to marry your Mama." "What did she say?" Hannah asked. "She said no, absolutely not. She said, 'Mr. Edmonds, you know it's against the law.'" Hannah's mouth fell open in dismay. "Against the law?" "Yep, illegal for a white person to marry someone Chinese." Hannah bit her lip, chilled by a nameless fear. She didn't yet understand the depths of dread possible when unfairness was sanctioned by the law. Mama reached out from the bed to touch her arm. Hannah saw that Mama's eyes were bright. She was telling Hannah without words not to worry, that this was not a sad story. At once Hannah felt better. "You knew that already, didn't you, Papa?" A nod. "I did." "So why did you ask her?" "Because I was really asking something else. Miss Lorna is a smart woman, and I was pretty sure she would understand. She said, 'Mr. Edmonds, here in the great state of California we have laws. Unlike in places like Arizona.'" She answered what was in my head, not what I'd said out loud. Hannah stared at him, then at Mama. "You mean she was telling you to go to Arizona?" "Yes, she was giving us her blessing, even though she knew it was against the law. So we went to Arizona Territory. It took a little doing, but finally we found the right person to perform the ceremony." "What kind of person?" "A justice of the peace." It sounded nice, the words justice and peace together like that. "A justice of the peace married you?" she repeated. Papa rolled his eyes. "No, sirree. I never married anyone but your Mama." "Papa!" She couldn't help but laugh. And while it was too hard for Mama to laugh, her smile at that moment lit up every corner of Hannah's world. Hannah was certain that Papa knew what she was referring to, at least the part about Miss Lorna. "You didn't break the law, but you sure went a long way to get around it," she said. "Yourself and Mama both. Don't you speak against your Mama." Hannah controlled the impulse to roll her eyes at how badly he was missing her point. "Papa, I'm not. How could I be? If you and Mama hadn't done what you did, I wouldn't have been born. The both of you, and Miss Lorna, too. You knew the law was wrong, and you did what you had to do." "Well, that was different." "How?" "The law should stay out of a man's personal business. As long as I wasn't forcing your Mama to marry me, it oughtn't to be anyone's business but hers and mine, and our families." Bringing up her parents' marriage hadn't swayed Papa as Anna had thought it would, and she couldn't think of another way to convince him. "It's like you're saying that things are only unfair when they happen to you." And that succeeded in making him angry. "I've had enough of your impudence," he snapped, and pushed his chair away from the table. "Tell me this. What's Harris going to do?" She lowered her gaze. He said that Wichipiwan and her friends aren't a threat to LaForge. He's not going to report them to Yankton. Sakes alive, Hannah, that's what you wanted, isn't it? So why in blazes are you pestering me over this? He stood and stomped from the room. Hannah slumped back in her chair. The conversation had lasted only a minute or two, but it had exhausted her, and she hadn't budged Papa 1 inch. As if tainted by that difficult conversation, everything seemed to go wrong with the next day's sewing work. Hannah had decided at the outset to make the dress in her own size. If no orders came in, at least she would have a new dress to wear. She'd been meticulous about measuring herself and adjusting the pattern accordingly. Bess finished basting the bodice, and Hannah tried it on. It was far too tight. "Rotten eggs," Hannah cursed, half under her breath. "Rotten, smelly, putrid, stinky eggs." Bess looked startled. "Pardon?" "Oh, I'm sorry. It's something my mommy used to say. Her favorite curse. In English it means rotten egg. Well, sometimes I add more words." Bess's eyes took on a bit of a sparkle. "So you can curse without people knowing you're cursing?" she said. "I'm going to try that at home." Hannah had to laugh, but then she sobered and shook her head. "There isn't enough seam allowance to fix this," she said. She would have to cut 2 new pieces of fabric for the front bodice and sew them again. "What did I do wrong?" she groaned. Once she'd taken the bodice apart, she and Bess discovered the mistake. Hannah had forgotten to account for eliminating the shirring of the original pattern. The shirred trim was much wider than the piping she was using in its place. It was a stupid mistake, a beginner's mistake, and she was no beginner, which only made her angrier at herself. "No use crying over spilled milk," Bess said. "That's what my ma says anyway. I'm going to start hemming the skirt. You go ahead and take care of the bodice, and don't worry about anything else. It'll go faster this time, because you've already done it once." Hannah cast her a quick, grateful look.